the Ticats Audio Network. This is the CFL This Week with Bubba O'Neil.
The Redblacks and Roughriders roll the dice on third down. Was it all business for the Blue Bombers as they blow out the Lions? Would moving the goalposts increase touchdowns? And undefeated no longer are the Argos as another quarterback is injured. This is the CFL This Week on the Ticats Audio Network. I'm your host and traffic cop for this terrific crew. Thanks for checking in. Hey, you're locked to the 3 Down podcast that offers unfiltered facts and opinions and stats from the top broadcasters and columnists in the country. So let me introduce our trio here. Now, I'm not sure if there's a play-by-play announcer who had more fun last week from 680 CJOB in Winnipeg. He's the voice of the Bombers, Derek Taylor. Thanks for joining us, bud.
Deep on a Lawler touchdown. Yeah, it was pretty good.
Hey, now this fella has delivered more high drama fourth quarter calls than anyone else so far this year. From TSN 1200 in Ottawa, the voice of the Redblacks, Jakubec.
Yeah, always great to be here. It's been a wild month, that's for sure.
And with all due respect, he is the veteran of the bunch. Not, saying anything there, Mark. But he's called more games than anyone else in the league from 770 CHQR in Calgary. Hall of Famer Mark Steven, thanks for checking in.
Good morning. Looking forward to a great talk.
Right on. Let's get to work, guys. Hey, no less than 3 controversial 3-down decisions were made in the final 5 minutes of the fourth quarter. My Riders head coach Craig Dickinson and Bob Dice of the Redblacks. I'm going to throw it right to you, AJ. You were on the call. Which was the most shocking to you?
So honestly, I don't think any of them were all that shocking. Here's the thing. To me, you can't dislike all 3. If you dislike all 3, it's because all 3 failed. You're doing it in hindsight. So if you don't like the fact that Bob Dice didn't go for the yard on 3rd and 1 or 3rd and goal from the 1, then to me, you can't like the fact, you can't change the way you look at that. For example, when they decided to go for a touchdown a little bit earlier and then decided to go for it on 3rd and a yard and a half from an Ottawa perspective. That's the way I view it. Personally, I like aggressive football. So I like the decision on 2nd and a yard and a half. Ottawa hadn't scored a touchdown all game. They tried something different. It didn't work. Then they went for the safe play. That didn't work either. And then Saskatchewan tried to finish the game with an aggressive call, and that didn't work. And so that allowed Ottawa the ball back. And then, rather than be aggressive again, it was safe. Look, I think it's a defensible call. I didn't like the call, but in the end, they took the points. They could have got the stop on special teams and defense. They didn't. They end up losing the game. To me, you lose the game based on more than one late call. You lose the game because net offense was about 370 to 220 on the night for Saskatchewan. And so in the end, I think we focus on one play. Would I have liked the 3rd and goal from the 1 to say, like, one of the things that, for example, that boggles my mind, I've been calling games in this league since 2014. I've been watching it since the early 80s in Edmonton. But one of the things that boggles my mind since I got into the league in 2014 calling games is the fact that it used to be, with the yard off the ball, if you had a 2nd and 1 or 3rd and 1 or less, in your sleep you would get it. And now, I've seen 6 or 7 misses this year just in Ottawa games alone. Probably 3 stops by the defense and 3 or 4 stops that the offense hasn't had. So I don't know why teams can't get a yard in their sleep. I don't know why Saskatchewan couldn't get that 3rd down conversion late to almost finish the game off. But I'm sure that was probably going through Bob Dice's mind that, look, we tried something aggressive before. It didn't work. We'll go safe now. We'll take the points. We'll take the lead. And our defense is going to get it done. I still would have liked, just given the impact of even missing on that play, keep Saskatchewan at first and 10 from their 1 maybe get the ball back, and if you do get the ball back, you're probably kicking a game-winning field goal. It doesn't always work that way. Hindsight's 20/20. In the end, Bob Dice made his call. They ended up losing the game. But I feel like, at least in Ottawa, some of the criticism of Bob Dice that I've seen in the last couple of days on social media, while I think, hey, look, that's what you get paid for. You're going to get criticized on tough plays like that. But to me, some of it's over the top. People suggesting that he should lose his job over that. This is not Jason Moss kicking the field goal, Edmonton against Calgary. It's not Rick Campbell conceding a safety against Calgary when they had a 4-point lead. This was a decision that I would have liked them to go for it, but it doesn't mean it was indefensible. It is what it is. To me, none of them were shocking.
It's crazy. I have to admit, I was totally reactionary, Mark Steven, when Dickinson rolled the dice in his attempt on third down. I thought it was one of the craziest calls I've ever seen. But you're right. AJ does raise a point. This is what they're paid for. They make the decisions. It's easy in hindsight, but boy, in the moment, it was frustrating, I thought.
Oh, yeah. No, I understand what you're saying. There's a lot of, different factors that go into those decisions. The final one in the last minute where Ottawa decided to kick the field goal, I have no problems with that. You're there to win. Take the points. They were behind. The points are right there for the taking. Do it. Yeah, touchdown would have obviously in hindsight been a lot better, but I don't have any problem with it. It didn't work. No coach is 100%. No coach is going to make every call at the right time. But it was weird. It was an odd way to end the game. All kinds of stuff going on. But the last one with, the field goal from the 8 by Ward didn't bother me in the slightest.
Derek, all of this within the last 4 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
And I know even in your land there, a guy by the name of that's AJ's guy, Pigrome, he kind of lost a job, did he not? Because he couldn't convert a couple of third downs?
Yeah, he missed 2 quarterback sneaks, and then we never saw him on the field again. When you make it 90% of the time, you miss it 10% of the time, and you never know when those 10% come. I love Dickinson going for it 3rd and 1 from his own 19, because the fear there, and what folks will say is, well, you've just given them a touchdown. What happened at the end of that drive? Ottawa settled for a field goal. Giving up possession at your own 19 doesn't mean you're giving up a touchdown. It doesn't even mean you're giving up a score. So I love Dickinson's aggressiveness in that this season. When did that change, though? Like this is what they never ever. Coaches never went for it on their own 19-yard line. Is it stats? You just have to embrace, teams convert 3rd and 0 more than 90% of the time. They go for it more than 90% of the time. 3rd and 1 is well over 80% of the time, and they go for it well over 80% of the time. 1.5, they start to get nervous. 2, they get nervous. 3rd and 2 is converted over 65% of the time, including sneaks and passes and penalties and things like that. Yet teams only go for it less than 40% of the time because they're scared about 3rd and 2. So I love Dickinson's been aggressive all season. I love it. The Bob Dice one did not make sense to me at all. 3rd and goal from the 1 with enough time remaining to force a 2 and out. If that had been a tie game and he kicked the field goal to make it a 3-point game, I'd probably be with him, because the worst, Saskatchewan is going to play conservative for the field goal and tie the game, send it to overtime. I'm fine with that. The thing with this one was 3rd and 1, the worst case non-fumble scenario. The worst case scenario is you don't get it. Mason Fine is 1st and 10 from his own 1-yard line. You bring 7 men, you might get a sack if they decide to pass the ball. You might get a sack and tie the game and be able to take the ball back. If they run the ball, Sask hadn't really run the ball real well all the time. If Saskatchewan is going to just quarterback sneak it, well, the quarterback might break his leg, and, he's going to get a yard, right? And it's 2nd and 9 from his 2. Well, Ottawa's getting the ball back, and as AJ has seen many times, Lewis Ward is a monster. So if you force a 2 and out in that situation, which you need a defensive stop anyway if you're Ottawa, if you get a stop, you get a very good chance at a game-winning field goal. And if you get the touchdown, oh my gosh, you're in heaven, right? Because now your defense gets to give it to them. So of the 3, I love the first 2. I did not like kicking the 8-yard field goal because you have them right where you want them, and the worst case scenario is still pretty good for your team with the amount of time they have remaining. Not to mention, we could go on to this forever because I've had this situation in a game before. What does Sask do on offense? Do they know how to handle 1st and 10 from their own 1-yard line when they cannot concede a safety? It's a real tense situation, I think, for an offense coming out if you turn it over on downs.
AJ, it just seemed like there was a lot on the line, and I feel like there's a mentality on the third downs that you have, and maybe this is just the way it has been over the years in football, that when you're at home, you make a certain call on third down, and when you're on the road, you make a certain call on third down. You said there was one of them that you didn't like. Which one was the one you didn't like?
Oh, it was the 3rd and goal from the 1. I like the aggressive call. I give me the aggressive call all day long. I said on my call, is safe death. It was the old John Tortorella, safe as death. He talked about that when he was coach of the Tampa Bay Lightning. And when I saw that field goal attempt, that went through my mind. It felt like safe was going to be death for the Ottawa Redblacks. It's way too easy to move the ball between the 40s in this league. I mean, we're going to talk about touchdowns and field goals, and there's too many field goals and on all that a little bit later. I get that. But even for a defense as good as the Ottawa Redblacks, teams between the 40s just seem to be able to move the ball at will against other teams in the Canadian Football League. It's easy to get into field goal range, especially with that amount of time left. If there was 10 seconds left or even 20 seconds left, maybe it's a different story. But given the amount of time left, given the fact, again, and Derek went through it so well also, I think it's defensible. I don't think it's like inexcusable or anything like that. But to me, I would have liked the aggressive call. The thing that stands out to me is in the Winnipeg game, scores 25-9. And look, this goes back to fans complain. Because, again, it makes me laugh that some fans complained about what they did earlier in the game in that 2nd and 1.5, and they decided to go for the end zone. But then they complained for that one as well, because to me, that's just complaining about the result, not the actual what you decided in the moment. But you look at the Winnipeg game, and it's 25-9, and Ottawa drives it down the field, and they don't kick a field goal. And then they drive it down the field again, and they don't kick a field goal. And it's funny, I looked in the text box, and there were people complaining, oh, well, if they would have kicked those field goals, would have been different. They wouldn't have needed the 2-point converts. And it's like, no. They actually created some confidence in the offense. They went out, and at 25-9, they didn't give up. They scored the touchdown defensively, and the rest is history. And I think when you play aggressive football, I think you get the dividends typically, like we saw in the Winnipeg game. As crazy as that game was, you're not going to see too many games like that every week. But I think the fact that he put confidence in his offense gave confidence not just to the offense, but to the entire team. And I think when you play not to lose, and that's essentially what they did, I think your team handles it a little bit differently. And so, look, it's something that you move on from. I don't think there's any doubt that this team still fully believes in Bob Dice and his ability to call a football game. And I like the fact, even though, fans probably don't like the fact that he's still doubling down on his decision publicly in the media, I like the fact that he's still taking the blame, because he doesn't like what he did on the kickoff, kicking it to Mario Alford when he could have kicked to the other side. So he's still taking accountability, and I think that goes a long way in that locker room. They still believe in him 100%, and we'll see how they respond this week against Toronto.
Can I jump in on sort of back at AJ there? The 2nd and 1.5, AJ, the throw from Pigram, was that a fade to Jalen Acklin?
Yeah.
So what Winnipeg will do, what BC will do with Lucky Whitehead is, what I would love better is you take your guy and you put him in the slot, and instead of throwing a fade to him, you can run the post, you can run the corner. And you're going to be one-on-one with a guy, and you have a 65-yard wide field, and you can take your pick. Whitehead for BC or Dembski is the one they'll do it with the Bombers, and you go, you can do whatever. You can do one or the other. Just get leverage. Whatever way he's giving you leverage, you go the other way, right? You get away from him. And instead of like a fade, we can do an episode on fade routes and how they bother me. But yeah, I love the going for it. I may not love the play call. I'm fine with the receiver they chose to go to, but do it out of the slot and take advantage of the huge wide field you get to play with.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, Gosselin was open over the middle as well. And
okay.
I just think, and that's one of those cases. You got Pigram in there. He's a rookie quarterback and probably didn't see Gosselin being wide open over the middle, which might have resulted in something different as well. So, yeah. and that's the reality, what you're going to get here with the Ottawa Redblacks. I think they've done marvelously to get to 3-5 at this point, given the fact that they've started 4 quarterbacks. And the challenge that Kahari Jones has had just working with 4 different quarterbacks and now a 5th in Tyrell Pigram, who's now your short yardage quarterback, but is going to be tasked to complete plays like that. It's a major challenge at this point of the season to go through what the Ottawa Redblacks have offensively. So I think a little patience is in order. This team was dreadful the last 3 seasons, and I think that's part of the frustration of the fan base is they went through a 50-game stretch where they won 8 games. But now they're starting to see some positive results. It's frustrating 2 weeks in a row to have 2nd and 2 from the 4, and then 3rd and goal from the 1. Late in games where if you score touchdowns, you probably end up winning, and your record's a little bit different. Even if you just win one of those 2 games, unfortunately they didn't win any, and so now they're 3-5. But it's still right there in front of this group. And look, it's going to be the same thing with Trey Ford. There's going to be ups and downs. When you've got a young quarterback, you're going to deal with some pitfalls. It's not going to be a straight line in terms of the development. And right now they're going through a bit of a roller coaster with that. But for me to see this team at 3-5 and competitive, 8 games into the season with their 4th quarterback starting games, I think is a positive. And we'll see how the second half of the season looks.
Last
Don't
one to you on this.
Why they went for it, though, the back. Oh, sorry.
I'm just saying. Last one to you there, Mark. On this, we could go on and on forever on 3rd down decisions. But just, I mean, from a Calgary perspective, you're watching carefully because you're so tight with the Rough Riders. I don't know. Was this whole thing frustrating to you?
I don't know, frustrating is the right word, or just entertaining, just the way it worked out. I mean, it's tough. Obviously, the Stampeders have also had 2 overtime games they lost 2. Those were frustrating, too, to see. But, just back to it, AJ touched on it. The Redblacks have been terrible for the last 3 years. Ever since Calgary and Ottawa met for the 2018 Grey Cup, the Redblacks kind of fell off the table for 3 years there. The Stamps have been good, not great, but... so they're desperate to put wins in, and if it means, a field goal late in the game to secure a win, I didn't have a problem with the call at all, because with that background, people, I assume, are tired of hearing about next week and how we're getting better. Be better.
Okay. Now, the Bombers, all the week in their preparation for the BC Lions, said, no, revenge, retribution. It has nothing to do with it. Yet they drop a 50-burger on the Lions. Caleros is not pulled till the 4-minute mark of the 4th quarter. Derek, you called the game. Was revenge and retribution a factor in this contest? Be honest.
I honestly don't think it was, but I can't figure out why Caleros was in that game in the 4th quarter at all. Doug Brown and I were talking about it on the broadcast. Doug had said, yeah, I wouldn't finish this drive that started in the 3rd quarter, but then he should be done, because what have we seen in the CFL this year? Quarterbacks get hurt. AJ's calling games. Quarterback gets hurt. They find a quarterback. He immediately gets hurt. The star comes back. He immediately gets hurt, and now they're on to their 4th guy. Mark and I, bless us, we're on our 1st quarterbacks, and that's so much easier that way. It was shocking to see Zach still in there, and I don't think revenge was necessarily on their mind. Maybe protection wise they went, oh yeah, by the way, did you call Matthew Betts' name at all? No, you didn't. Oh, okay, we're good. Yeah, it was just, it's so strange. I want to go back at some point and find out what game they lose the first one by 24, they win the second one by 36. A 60-point flip in a 2-game series is, I imagine only in the CFL does something like that happen. It's bonkers. But they kept swearing, no, we're not even thinking about week 3. We'll take lessons. I took lessons from it 5 weeks ago. La la la. It's hard to think that Buck Pierce, the offensive coordinator, and all the offensive line and all that defensive line didn't want to send a message back to BC about, hey, we'll see you October 6th for first place.
Mark, to be honest, after BC won that game, they did a lot of talking. Like, let's be honest, they did a lot of talking. They said they were the beasts. They were the guys. There's a new sheriff in town. And there was even conversation around the CFL that, you know what, the Bombers are getting older, and the demise, I guess, certainly wasn't as quick as some people would like to think.
I think obviously there was an element of redemption or whatever the word is, but I just think also it was a very good team. Winnipeg, coming off a bye week, they had a chance to fix a few things, and they certainly had a great game plan. They worked that BC secondary very thoroughly over. So I think that, Winnipeg just went back to the top where they are, and have they lost games? Yes. Are they getting older? Yes. But they're still the favorite in my mind.
AJ, the shots of Ryan Phillips on the sidelines, he was completely annoyed with what he was seeing. Probably more so with the play of his secondary. Did this one surprise you? I mean, it was really built up as the game of the year.
Yeah, it didn't. I thought Winnipeg's a proud team. The thing about the Canadian Football League and football in general, you're always going to have a couple of stinkers over the course of the season. And how do you respond to those? And when you've got the championship DNA that Winnipeg's got, I wasn't surprised in the least. Was I surprised in the scoreline? Yes. But especially, and Dane Evans has been excellent as a number 2, but I still think that team goes as Vernon Adams leads them, at least offensively. The BC defense, that's where it really surprised me, was that they put up 50, just given how good the BC defense has been, and certainly that was a factor in the first game. As far as the revenge factor goes, here's what I know. I think, and Derek's around it, so he would have a better handle on just being around that group on a daily basis. But I do think if you're a championship team like that, you're probably not focusing on revenge. You're focusing on just your own team, what you need to do better, and just going out and playing better football. And I think there's part of that. That being said, I know individual athletes, all you have to do is look at The Last Dance. And if you feel slighted in any way, if you have any opportunity to give yourself a little added motivation, whether it's as a group or individually, maybe it wasn't brought up as a group. I'm guessing it probably wasn't brought up as a group, but I'm guessing individually there are a lot of players on that team that were looking for a little bit of payback, and while publicly they wouldn't have said it, I'm sure they were feeling pretty good, especially the way BC was talking after that first game.
Derek, let's be honest here. Stanley Bryant may be the best offensive lineman maybe of all time. Maybe. He has to be a pretty proud man, yet he was shredded after that week 3 loss.
Yeah, as he's getting speed rushed to the inside by Matthew Betts, and you go, I kind of don't know what's happening here, and multiple quarterback pressures, and just 7 sacks in that first game, and then 0 in the second game. And we were looking for, what are they going to do, right? How are they going to contain Betts and Menard and Barron and the whole gang? And there wasn't an excessive amount of 6th offensive linemen. There wasn't a lot of fullback. There wasn't a lot of quick 5-yard stick route, get the ball out of my hands, oh my God. 1st and 15 from their 5, they throw it deep to Lawler, then they throw it deep to Schoen, and they go 105 yards in 2 plays. You go, oh, they're okay. Maybe, and honestly, I haven't broken that game down yet, but I just left that game feeling it was just, yeah, you know what? The offensive line, the guys responsible for protection, just played significantly better than they had 6 weeks prior, because I didn't really see any extra bodies or BC having changed up its way. It just was not there for BC. So Matthew Betts blowing kisses in week number 3 was him getting blown away in week number 9.
Let me stick with you, Derek, on this one, because I know you have your feelings here. Is it, do you, from what you saw, especially from your view, is the Lions offense tremendously different with Vernon Adams there than with the 17 running that offense?
Here's the way I address it in the postgame. I didn't leave the game thinking that Vernon Adams would have done much different in that game, that the result would have been much different. I think Vernon's got a different skill set than Dane. I think Vernon's calmness under pressure would have benefited BC in that game. But in week number 3, Lucky Whitehead was 15 yards open on everybody. Every receiver, Jordan McSimic seemed to run into open space, and Vernon would put the ball there, and okay, well, there's nothing. There's nothing that seems like this is exactly what seems like should be happening. I guess is what I'm going for. Vernon's not the same scrambler he used to be. Evans is able to. They're a little closer in scrambling than he would have been earlier in their career, in my mind. But Vernon's not a more accurate passer than Dane Evans. I don't know that he's a significantly better decision maker, but Dane will crack under pressure in my mind. And the first play from scrimmage, Willie Jefferson is supermaning through the A gap and smashing Dane Evans, and we thought, yeah, it's probably going to be that kind of night for Evans. I'm curious what would have happened had he not injured. I think it was his ribs in that game, how it would have been, but once they went to Dominic Davis, just that game was just over at that point. But yeah, I think the big difference for me now from Vernon to Dane is their ability to be calm under pressure and even relentless pressure like the Bombers can provide.
And extend plays too. I think, and don't know who we're going to get this week, but we'll wait and see what happens. So,
bigger surprise, Mr. Steven, the Stampeders' victory or the Argonauts' complete inability to move the ball once Chad Kelly checked out of the ball game?
Well, obviously, he's the guy that's made them go all season, Chad Kelly. And I don't know how serious it is. It didn't look that serious because he didn't leave the game. He stood on the sidelines for the rest of the game. But the Stampeders drew up quite a conservative game plan, keeping it on the ground, nothing too deep as far as passing goes. It was a very accurate performance by Jake Mayer, not a particularly entertaining one, but they got the job done. So, I would say the Stampeders, look, they've been close, but they are where they are. I mean, I'm not trying to make excuses or paper over the fact that they've had a rough start, but, the fact is they're a good team. They played well, and, they really geared up, for the second game in 5 days. They had the short week and did some additional things. They used the fullback an awful lot. I think that's as much as William Longley has played in his 8 years with the Stampeders in any one game. So, let's give the Stampeders credit. Clearly, Toronto was far from at their best, but that was going to happen. They're a good team, but nobody goes undefeated.
AJ, when you look at that Calgary team, very much like we were just talking about with the Bombers there in their Week 3 loss to the Lions, just a lot of people saying, the two decades of dominance are over. And yes, I understand that your record is your record, but maybe we're underselling the Stampeders a little bit, maybe?
Yeah, actually, and I don't claim to have a great record picking CFL games every week. I don't keep a running tab of it, but it's not tremendous. I had the Stampeders winning. I just felt that was better than a 2-5 football team. And I figured Toronto, the thing that I watched the week before against Toronto, and their defense and their special teams really looked good, but offensively, they didn't really do much against Saskatchewan. They didn't have to because defense and special teams got the job done. The thing that worried me about Toronto watching them in the preseason was their quarterback play beyond Chad Kelly. I saw them firsthand in Guelph in preseason play, and that's where both Tyree Adams and Dustin Crum looked really, really good, and you thought, okay, is Ottawa going to keep 4 quarterbacks here? And sure enough, they made the right decision, not just because of the play of those two, but certainly when you look at injury situations, it certainly worked out for the best. But I was underwhelmed by what I saw in preseason from the Argos backups. So doesn't mean, look, these are guys that are pretty new to the Canadian Football League, and we'll see if Chad Kelly can go this week against Ottawa, and if not, maybe decent opportunity for an upset for the Ottawa Redblacks, because we've seen in this league, we've seen it in Hamilton, the difference between having your starting quarterback and once you start to go down that depth chart and go to number 2 and number 3, Saskatchewan's wins dropped off. Hamilton's wins dropped off. Certainly Ottawa's had some challenges at this point in time, and BC has looked like a different team as well without their number one. So when you're without your starting quarterback, it makes a big difference, and in particular in Toronto, where they just didn't have any veteran help back there. I'm not surprised that once Kelly got punted from that game, that they weren't able to have any success.
Yeah, they didn't move the ball at all. Just like you say, an inexperienced quarterback trying to jump into the middle of the game. That's tough for any quarterback under any circumstance. And he looked like a guy with very little experience.
Yeah, Derek, I know you really analyze that quarterback position, and I guess Cameron Dukes has got a lot to learn in this league if he's got to play again.
Yeah, and I think we went to the season with 6 teams not really prepared to go to their second quarterback, right? BC, if they had to go to Dane Evans, that looked good. Hamilton, I like Matthew Schultz, so they seem like they'd be fine. And Ottawa, I mean, going into the season, I thought Nick Arbuckle would be an option to fill in for Masoli. Maybe not as much, but 6 other teams were like, oh, we're in a lot of trouble. The Bombers, trouble. Sask is I mean, they won a game, but they're seeing trouble now because the drop from what Trevor Harris was doing to Mason Fine is substantial. Edmonton's trouble across the board. Montreal, the fall from Fajardo to Caleb Evans. Most teams, I think, would be in big trouble if they have to go away from their starting quarterback. So you just kind of pray he's healthy and do what you can to keep him healthy. And that Ottawa won 2 games with its 4th quarterback, for crying out loud. That is unbelievable to me. Because just think of what that takes to happen. Not the first choice, not the second choice, not the third choice, Tyree Adams, who popped in that one game, the 4th choice. And they're winning football games, and they're competitive in football games. That's a real testament. So that Toronto from Chad Kelly, who's looked very nice, to Cameron Dukes, that's the normal drop-off I would expect. When backups pop, when Crum wins 2 games as the starter, that's more the aberration as opposed to what really often happens.
You know, the crazy thing, the 2 wins really could have been 4. Like, they really, really could have been 4, AJ. Let's go to this one, guys. I'm so interested in your opinions in this one because, you know, as all you do, you know, you kind of look at what people are writing about the Canadian Football League. And Daryl Davis of the Leader Post wrote a controversial article that had me thinking. He writes that the goalpost should be moved to the back of the end zone. Now, his reasons are it would be safer for the players to not have this immovable steel post protruding from the middle of the playing area, which it does in the Canadian game as compared to the National Football League. Number 2, it gives quarterbacks an unobstructed pass view when throwing in or out of the end zone. And it creates a more offensive-minded, touchdown-oriented game. Mark Steven, take the lead on this one.
Well, it's certainly provocative. You're right about that. You know what I'd love? I don't know if it's possible at all. Do it next year in the preseason to see what it really looks like in practice. Obviously, that would involve changing the stadiums and that. I view it as kind of a radical change because, you know, it would change a lot of the strategy and tactics about when teams go for it, when teams try for a field goal. I guess I'm a traditionalist, so I'm not completely sold on it, but I'd be open to it if they tried it in the preseason just to see what it looks like, see how much of a difference it makes, if anything. You know, it also would take, though, a bit of a weapon out of some of the great field goal kickers that have dominated the league for the last many years. But I'm open to it. I'd like to see it. Do I think it's going to make a huge difference? Not sure, but I'd love to see it tried.
AJ, we're kicking a lot of field goals these days in this league. Like, we really are. Like, and I don't know if that has the fact that, you know, 3/4 of the team are dealing with second and third and fourth string quarterbacks. That may contribute as well, too. But the truth is, the goalposts are being seen a lot in this league and not so much touchdown dances and celebrations.
Too many field goals. I like the idea. I'm with Mark. I think one of the beauties of what you see in minor league baseball and minor league hockey is you can try different things out in lower leagues. Unfortunately, with football, there's just not a lot of professional football out there. And especially, you know, the 20-yard end zones make this a bit of a challenge in the Canadian game. So where are you going to try it? Are you going to try it in U Sports? Are you going to try it in, CJFL, junior football? I think those are the only places you could really get a pretty good handle on things, because the one thing you worry about is just unintended consequences. And if all of a sudden teams still aren't scoring touchdowns and they're not kicking field goals, well, maybe some of those 23-21 games are now 14-10 across the board. So that's not going to go over well either. But I do like the idea. I'm fascinated by it. I'd love to see it tested out, because I think, some of the things, for example, in baseball, and I used to follow baseball religiously in the 80s and 90s, and I've kind of not fully checked out, but I'm partially checked out now compared to my interest previously. And a lot of that is just the way the game is played, not a lot of athleticism. And what we've seen this year with the bigger bases, and I never really would have guessed that, and the banning of the shift, which I don't even necessarily like, and I know I'm going off topic here, but we've seen a lot more athleticism. We've seen a lot of younger teams like the Reds and the Orioles that maybe were built a little bit differently having a lot more success, because guess what? They're younger, they're more athletic, and they're taking advantage of the new rules. The games are shorter, the games are more exciting, and you look at attendance across the board, and it's way up across Major League Baseball. So, but they tried these things out, a lot of the different things, the pitch clock, for example, in the minor leagues. So you'd love to see it tried out somewhere else, but I'm intrigued by it for sure. I don't think it's a terrible idea.
Derek, your thoughts?
I don't like it. I don't like it. I like the thought of let's get more touchdowns in the CFL. I like the thought of let's have them go for it more. But I just think coaches are conservative, and we're seeing a version of it in Edmonton already. And what are they doing? They're punting, right? Edmonton has a kicker they don't trust from beyond the 40-yard line. So I was just pulling it up. 13 times this season, a team has punted from inside the opponent's 45-yard line. Edmonton's doing it regularly because, 3rd and 2, we're gonna play field position instead of trying for the field goal. And to me, that's just what this would be. We now have teams punting from the plus 40, which will just hurt. Well, it's 3rd and 7. We can't try this field goal. We're not going to go for it. Let's punt. And to me, it would just be more punting. And I don't need more punting. As great as the punting game is this year, and as the Aussie kickers bring these new punts in, I just think coaches are still going to be conservative. They're not going to become aggressive because the goalpost is in the back of the end zone now and field goals are longer. It's going to be a punt fest, and I don't want to see that. There'd be a point where, okay, we're at about the 30, so maybe we should start going for touchdowns. But coaches are still conservative. The 4th down revolution in the NFL has not yet become the 3rd down revolution in the CFL. Coaches are still conservative, and this would do nothing to help that. Not to mention, any Bomber fan wants the goalpost in the front of the end zone because of the 2019 West Final. So I'm just saying, if you move it, the folks at IG Field are burning this thing down.
I just agree that the unintended consequences. That's why I'd like to see it tried somewhere else. Because these coaches, just put it in their hands. It's quite a radical change, too. So that goes against my conservative notions a bit. But I'm not opposed to it. I just like to see it tried before they just throw it into a season and say, go get them. Because I don't know what the unintended consequences would be. One of those is just exactly that. They don't score enough touchdowns to offset the lack of field goals. And suddenly, 12-9 becomes the norm. Hope that's not the case, though.
Well, Derek actually opens up a whole new set of thoughts, I think, that I didn't even think about. That, yes, coaches, on one hand, may start going for it on 3rd down a whole more because of the extra 20 yards that you're going to add to a field goal. But in a certain kind of way, isn't that what we want in the Canadian Football League? The fact that we have kick returns, we have punt returns, the most exciting play in any football, NFL or CFL, is either a missed return, a field goal for a return by a player, or a punt return, or a kickoff return. AJ, I love that play, and I think we might see more of it.
Yeah, here's the problem, and I know, when you talk about more punts, yeah, I mean, some people certainly look at more opportunities for punt returns. A lot of the people that I talk to that are maybe down on the CFL, that's one of the first things they talk about. It's too many punts. So I don't know if you want more punts. Now, again, I think like, where's that line? Most teams, like Edmonton, I get it. They're a bit of an anomaly in a lot of different ways in this league, and I say that as a guy that grew up going to games at Commonwealth Stadium. It's sad to see how far they have fallen, but it would be interesting to see, especially in that, I don't know, 25 to 30. Like, if you're 3rd and 7, which, that's not a gimme for sure. Like, 3rd and long, I think a lot of coaches would be certainly averse to going for it in that situation a lot. But if you're 3rd and 7 from, say, the 25-yard line, I think you're going for it, right? I mean, what's the benefit of punting and trying to angle it inside? Because if you screw it up, they're going to get the ball in a better spot potentially than where you left it off. And you might get the single point. Like, I mean, can you imagine some of the different things? I mean, Chris Jones punting from the 23-yard line, and they essentially give up 17 yards and get a single point. That would feel kind of the opposite, almost going full circle of them conceding that late single point by CJ Sims earlier this year.
I'm in general cautious. I'd like to do it. If they do think of something like that, do it cautiously. But I like to see it in practice because, like you say, with people just decide to punt rather than go for it. These guys are paid to win. A lot of them will lean to the conservative side.
Sorry, Derek, we missed you.
I was muted as I was making my great point there. I wonder, honestly, the unintended consequence, how many teams would immediately go to the onside punt from the plus 30 and go, oh, you know what, I'm going to hang this in the air. And I think it's a neat play every once in a while, but if I start seeing that 3 times a game, I'm going to pull my hair out because it's just it's now the rugby roots have come back too hard. But that would be if you thought, okay, we don't want to try a 57-yard field goal, we don't want to punt. We're going to try a little onside action here. It would be that would to me would be the next step in this of I don't want to do any other stuff.
Me DT.
What's that?
All of a sudden, I'm down. I want to see more onside punts.
They're so much fun when you see them regularly. But, yeah, I just go back to the not having confidence in getting away from conservatism. I wondered, this is one that struck me. When the Bombers, Justin Medlock, retired, I thought, they're going to have – like, Medlock to me is the best kicker in the history of the CFL. I thought, okay, they're going to have a kicker who's not as good. I wonder if it will make them more aggressive. And it changed nothing in their aggressiveness. They just did the same things. They punted when they would have let Medlock kick a 58-yarder. So I want more aggression. I want more risk taking because the game's more fun that way. And yeah, I love Daryl's out of the box thinking. Daryl Davis, great longtime observer of the CFL, but just not there. I don't know, Mark. How many onside punts do you call in this season? Like none. 0.5.
That's
yeah.
0.25. Yeah, it's very much
3 a game would be pretty. It would be something.
Yeah. It's pretty radical change. That's why I'd like to see it massaged and at least examined without just ripping a page out of the rule book and putting in a new page the next year.
Again, guys, another outstanding lineup of games going into, I guess, week 9 now? Bombers at Elks. Yee. Riders at Alouettes. Stampeders at Lions. Redblacks at Argos. Mark Steven, the game of the week is...
Yeah, some of them have trying to figure out which one has the most playoff and standings implications there. I guess I'll stay close to home. If the Stampeders want to move up in the standings and finish the first half of the season, out of, shall we say, a crossover range, I would say Calgary at BC. They're going to face a BC team that was badly beaten up last week. So I guess maybe it's too close to my wheelhouse, but I'll say the Calgary-BC game.
DT?
I just know Winnipeg-Edmonton isn't going to be Winnipeg putting up 60, so I don't know if I'm looking forward to the 24-12 showdown that'll be. Oh, you know what? Let's go with that one, and I'm fairly biased. But how do the Bombers follow up putting 50 on BC? And what does this new look Edmonton look like? I want for better for the Elks and Elks fans. I want for better for Trey Ford. He's going to get the start this week, so I'm curious to see what he's all about. We saw him in the preseason last year against the Bombers, so maybe that's the one I'm going for. The other ones, I would have said Ottawa, Toronto if I knew Chad Kelly was playing, because man, Ottawa can be an absolute heartbreaker, and it'd be great to see it happen to the Argos. But just my uncertainty there leads me to Bombers at Elks on Thursday.
If you're Trey Ford and you're finally getting your shot, and then there's some guy by the name of Five Jefferson and Jeffcoat on the other, come on, talk about a baptism, it just seems tough.
And then Adam Bighill's going to put one through your ribs at one point. And you got to get up after that and go back out there. No, it's hey, might as well rip off the Band-Aid, right? Just get right after it.
One day you're going to have to face them no matter what.
Yeah, no matter what. But just your first one back. Oh my goodness, AJ, your game's looking pretty good.
Yeah, and I'll vote. Honestly, if I was looking at the outside, I'd probably not pick Bombers Elks, sorry DT, and look at the other three games just because I don't believe it's going to be competitive. The other three all look like they're going to be competitive, and especially if Chad Kelly doesn't play, to me that's 50-50 ball game as far as I'm concerned with Ottawa going into Toronto. So opportunity for Ottawa. This next 3-game stretch, I feel like going into Toronto, depending on the uncertainty of their quarterback situation, and then you've got Montreal at home, then in Edmonton. I feel like Ottawa's got to win a couple of these games, get to 5-6, and now you're in a real good spot down the stretch to battle for one of those last playoff spots with Calgary, Saskatchewan, Hamilton, and Montreal. Looks like 3 of those teams are going to make it and 2 are going to miss. I think BC, Toronto, and Winnipeg, you can pretty much put those teams in the playoffs in pen, and certainly Edmonton doesn't look like they're going to be anywhere near the playoffs. So real opportunity for Ottawa this week. I'm curious to see how they bounce back, and they've shown that they can shock the world already with a big win over Winnipeg. We'll see if they can do it again on the road at BMO Field, where they experienced their greatest success in franchise history, winning the 2016 Grey Cup there.
Derek, I know for those that don't know, and I'm sure most do, that you were once the voice of the Riders, and I think this is an interesting matchup in Montreal. The Cody Fajardo versus the much improved Mason Fine.
As AJ was talking, I went back and thought, oh wait a minute, Fajardo's going back to Sask. They ran him out of town on a rail. And he's going back to take on Mason Fine, the guy that late season they preferred to him. So can we rewind 4 minutes and I've changed my vote to I want to see Fajardo. And part of that is we don't always get this matchup because of the CFL schedule makers. We weren't going to get Bo back in Calgary this season. Andrew Harris didn't come back to Winnipeg, blah, blah, blah. Fajardo going back to Sask?
Is it? Okay, I thought it was in Montreal for some reason, I thought.
The site I'm on here is Montreal at Sask. Somebody please do correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I could be wrong. I'll trust you, not me.
Pulling up the CFL website. Oh, it's in Montreal, but Coolbet was doing me bad. Okay. Never mind. I rewind a minute before I rewinded 4 minutes, and it's still Winnipeg, Edmonton. But Fajardo, when he goes back to Sask, wiping his feet on the carpet after a win would be pretty incredible. We need those moments in the CFL, and unfortunately, we don't always get them in the schedule, so I'm going to savor it while it's happening.
Well, guys, it's been a wonderful moment here on the CFL this week. You three, again, outstanding opinions and excellence in all the topics that we kind of went through. And as we always like to do, I know a lot of our fans out there, sometimes they like to shout out at you, good things or bad things. Mark, where are they going to find you in Calgary?
Well, we're on AM 770 CHQR. We'll have the game on the weekend, beginning at 3:30 with our pregame show. Kickoff at 5. This is the middle of a huge month for Calgary, with first Toronto, in Vancouver, Winnipeg in Calgary, then in Toronto. So their season, the balance is right here, right in front of them right now.
AJ?
Yeah, TSN 1200 do the drive show every weekday, 4 to 6, and so we'll be talking football today for sure, based on what we saw on the weekend, and on Twitter at the Super AJ.
Hey, make sure to say hi to your color guy is outstanding. Like, you got a great guy by your side there.
Yeah, no, he's definitely one of the best in the business. Been around the Canadian Football League. Won the 76 Grey Cup. He's the guy when you see the shot of Clements to Gabriel, the first guy going over to celebrate with him is Jeff Avery. So I've been calling a lot of football, from Roughriders to Renegades to Redblacks since 1988. And yeah, couldn't ask for a better partner, that's for sure.
You know, you got a pretty good guy by your side, Derek Taylor, too. And I mean, I love what he said. I guess there was during the post-game show that there's really only two good teams in the league right now, which I thought was. And you know what? Hey, anyone that knows Doug Brown, you're not going to argue with that cat, especially during his playing days. He was one mean guy on that D-line.
Yeah, Doug's awesome to be working alongside in the booth, and yeah, it just takes a shot at BC. Oh yeah, there's only 2 teams left now, 50 on them, but 2 teams left. So yeah, we have the call from Edmonton on Thursday. What is it? 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock local, 8 o'clock Winnipeg. So we're on at 6 with the pregame show and our cast of characters and. Yeah, I feel like we all maybe go to Edmonton going, don't let this team be the one that Edmonton snaps the streak against. Don't let it happen tonight. Just let us get out of here alive.
There's a 5-game stretch I looked at. And look, Ottawa's in there, Calgary's in there twice. I think they play Hamilton and some. They're not winning this week. Maybe in that 5-game stretch, Edmonton finds a way to sneak a win. It's not happening this week.
I just don't wish it on either of you. Mark, you got a couple of visits there. I hope it's not you guys.
September, the Home and Home Labor Day series, yeah.
Well, you know there is going to be at some point, because no one goes undefeated and no one's going winless, in my opinion. And I know the Cats, I can't remember the year, but they went 1-17. But I believe with that Edmonton team, there's going to be a string where they win 3 or 4. I really believe that's going to happen somewhere, and it's just who's going to be the first team. Scary stuff.
Break the egg. Yeah.
Break the egg. Exactly, guys. Anyway, folks, again, thank you so much for checking in and enjoying this chat of CFL football on the CFL this week. Like, subscribe, you know all the things that we appreciate. We little messages and the notes to all of us. We try to do our best here. And again, bring you the wonderful guys like Derek, Mark, and AJ, who, again, we thank once again. Hey, this has been the CFL This Week on the Tiger Cats Audio Network. Have a great week of football.